duty. For the nomadic Bedouins of the ancient Near East, these were wandering shepherds who lived in desert areas, hospitality was a necessity. When you live in the desert, you never know when you might be dependent on others for water and for survival. You also never know when your next guest is going to arrive and who that guest might be. It might be a messenger of God, or it might be your mortal enemy. No matter, hospitality was extended without reservation or expectation of reward to friend and foe alike. In the world of the Old Testament, hospitality was not a virtue, not a good deed you may or may not choose to perform. Hospitality was a given, simply something you did. Hospitality was a way of life, an expression of the conviction that I'm created in the image of God, and you, whoever you are, is also created in the image of God. That makes us neighbors, brothers, sisters, children of the one and only God. Now, the word hospitality in Greek means brotherly or sisterly love of the stranger. The word occurs only twice in the New Testament, but the idea is central to the message of Jesus and the life of his earliest followers. Hospitality frequently plays a role in the parables of Jesus, including the parable of the great banquet, our text from Luke for today. God is a gracious host who welcomes strangers and outcasts to a marvelous feast. Hospitality was the guiding principle of Jesus' own life and ministry. He entertained, and he was a gracious host to sinners and tax collectors and those that nobody else would entertain. Hospitality was also central to the life of the first generations of Christians. Hospitality was extended to traveling Christians. Back before the advent of Holiday Inn, safe accommodations were few and far between for people who were traveling. You could say that church folk were the original Airbnb host. Hospitality in the church of the first century was extended to anyone in need, not simply to fellow Christians. This extension of assistance to anyone in need was a continuation of the Old Testament Hebrew understanding of hospitality. But it was also a living out of the life Jesus lived. Jesus welcomed strangers and outcasts into his home, and he invited the poor and the blind and the lame to dine at his table. So also in the New Testament, Christian love always implies hospitality, that brotherly, sisterly love of the stranger. And any discussion of Christian love is a call to love the stranger, not just those whom we already love. Faithful hospitality takes different forms in different times and places. For Abraham, hospitality was inviting 3 strangers into his tent for dinner. For us today, the call to extend hospitality includes offering hospitality to the immigrant and refugee who are seeking safety or life in this country. Hospitality is not shaped or limited by one's country or one's origin or one's religious beliefs or lack of religious beliefs. By its very definition, hospitality is what we extend to those who need our hospitable response. Well, the second half of Jesus' parable of the great banquet is about hospitality, the gracious and accepting hospitality of the commonwealth of God. The first half of the parable is about humility. When invited to a banquet, Jesus says, don't pick the best seats. Someone more important may come, and then you will be humiliated when you're asked to go and sit in the back. Clamoring for recognition and status might be okay in some circles, but not in God's order. The interpretive word here is Jesus' principle that the last shall be first and the first shall be last. All who would exalt themselves will be humbled, the parable says. Christian humility is about true respect for others. Humility is not pity for those that we view as less fortunate than ourselves. Humility is welcoming any and all as fellow and equal children of the one and same God. Christian humility is hospitality. Now, in the parable of the great banquet, note that the host was not called to establish a soup kitchen, nor to contribute funds to a shelter. Those are deeds worthy of praise and things that we ought to do, to be sure. But that is not what hospitality and humility is all about in Jesus' eyes. Jesus called upon the host to throw a banquet at his house and to personally invite the poor and the sick and the outcast and those who could never repay his hospitality. Then and only then, Jesus says, will one be truly blessed. For it is more blessed to give than to receive, and in God's realm, joy abounds for those who are invited and are welcomed. Humility and hospitality. The author of Hebrews put it all together when he wrote, "Let your mutual love continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers." We are called to extend hospitality in the name of Jesus Christ, and that hospitality begins right here in the community of Christians, the church. For what makes the church is the fact that no one is considered a stranger here. Outside these walls, there are princes and captains of industry and socialites and all manner of heroes and heroines and important people. But here, there are only to be found children of God seeking to